If I told you you had the power to change the world, would you believe me? Today, I'm going to discuss the impact of one industry that has experienced a worldwide growth and has impacted nearly every person living on Earth today. When you look around, what do you see? We are all wearing clothing. Hi, my name is Sharon Brunk. I'm a student at WGU, student ID number 438355, and this is my presentation for YJT2. The fashion industry has impacted our lives since the 1800s, but recently we have moved towards a new era of fashion, fast fashion. What is fast fashion? Fast fashion is a contemporary term given to clothing that is mass-produced and meant to be worn and discarded at a high rate. As Americans, we are the drivers of fast fashion. We love the cheaply made clothing that has little financial impact, and we love shopping for today. Unfortunately, our lust for the trendy has had some major global ramifications. Fast fashion is a global phenomenon with a global impact. Research shows that fast fashion is the number 2 pollutant on the planet, destroys lands, poisons water, and pollutes the air. The purpose of this speech is to inform you, the consumer, the impact fast fashion has as a global industry. The intended audience is, well, everyone, especially those of us who love fashion. With all of the news in the headlines today, the upcoming elections, Britain's exit from the EU, police killing people and people killing police, local and international terrorist attacks, one might ask, why this topic? Well, the answer is simple. The average person cannot control any of these things, but we can significantly impact the world by selectively choosing the clothing on our backs. In the 1800s, people used wool from sheep to spin thread, which was in turn processed into fabric and then made into cotton. The process was slow and tedious until the invention of the sewing machine in 1845. With this invention, it made the whole process of garment production faster and more efficient than before, allowing for faster production than ever before. By the time World War II was over, mass-produced clothing was the industry standard, giving greater access to all Americans to the top new styles. In this early model, fashion was produced on a 2-cycle calendar, fall and spring. People would concentrate their fashion spending on these 2 seasons and would hold off on purchases in the incremental seasons except to replace brokener clothing. In the 1960s, the trend towards more fashionable clothing led manufacturers to look outside our borders to keep up with the fashion demands of the day. Up to this point, 97% of the clothes worn by Americans were made right here in America. By the 1980s, markets began to shift. The old market was not producing clothing fast enough, especially the trendy, fashionable things that we all needed for that day. The industry came up with a new fashion model, the quick response model, which made it quicker for consumers to purchase the fashion that was trending today. By the 1990s, however, this model was thrown out the window to make room for a new fashion model, fast fashion. Today, in America, less than 3% of the clothing worn is made here. That's a huge shift. Here I have a graph, and it talks about, or it displays, I should say, apparel that is imported into the United States, and it's broken out in domestic dollar volume. So, if we take a close look at this graph, right here, this big blue area, that's China. We have 33.8% of our dollars from the textile industry. The second largest one, this green pie, is the rest of the world. However, if we take a real close look, we can see other countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, India, and Cambodia are also contributors to this giant world picture of where our clothing is produced. This graph is from Sourcing Journal, from an article by Judith Russell, published in May 2015. The article is titled, China, Vietnam Gained Shares in U.S. Apparel Market in the First Quarter. Fast fashion in the global world. Have you ever considered where your clothing comes from? We kind of got a look when we saw that graph. Most of it probably comes from China. But there's a company called Monsanto who has dedicated their company to genetically altering seeds. Seeds are the beginning of life. They are what we put on our dinner plates, and they're what we wear on our backs. When a company has a monopoly on seeds, they control the world. This company has control over most of the seeds that are used to produce our clothing. On their website, Monsanto discusses how they are only here to help the farmers, both large and small, with products to save on water and energy, and, of course, to provide them with much needed pesticides, such as Roundup, in order for their farms to be successful. They get a profit when they sell the seeds to U.S. farmers as well as farmers in developing nations like China and Bangladesh, with the promise that their crops will need less pesticides, less water, and yield more crops. The initial results of these tests were magnificent. They did just what they were supposed to do. Everyone was happy with their results. However, over time, this has proven to be less potent and less profitable for the farmers. If we take a snapshot of the farmers that produce cotton for our clothing in Punjab, India, we discover many discouraging things. The seeds that are meant to provide an abundance of crop that are healthy and mature faster and are supposed to use less resources like energy, water, and most of all chemicals, delivered on the promise of certain success for these poor farmers, are failing. The farmers generally have to take out huge loans for these seeds, about $550 US, and put all of their assets to buying these magic seeds. Sounds alright so far, right? Simple business transaction. But if the unforeseen happens, a drought, an infestation, a fire, or any number of other reasons the seeds do not produce the crops that were anticipated, the farmers are ruined. There's a YouTube video that I've posted a link to in my reference list with a story called Punjab's Killing Fields, 15 farmer suicide reported. This takes an up-close look at these events. As a matter of fact, on an international scale, these types of small farms are failing and the farmers are committing suicide. One report, called the International Farmer Suicide Crisis, states that farmers are killing themselves on an average of one farmer every 32 seconds. Did you ever think that $10 shirt could cost so much? Cottonseed, like most agriculture, needs to be specifically handled. Cotton plants thrive in conditions that are hot and where water is plentiful, according to cotton.org. So do many types of insects. The genetically altered seeds do protect the seeds from specific bugs, but not all of them. So pesticides are still needed to keep the plants from being consumed, and fertilizer is still used to ensure their growth is healthy and abundant. There are, however, unintended consequences from this. The water that is used is either absorbed into the earth or redistributed into streams and rivers. This is poisoning the environment. In the seeding process, the crop receives a dosing of fertilizer in order to ensure that they will produce an abundance of large, healthy crops. Once the crops begin to grow, they are often inundated with plant-eating pests, which are met by pesticides. Pesticides are the only product on the earth intentionally used to kill living organisms, from bugs and rodents to weeds and fungus. Both the fertilizer and the pesticides are poisonous to the ground that they inhabit. Poor farmers and their families across the globe live on these farms. They are at ground zero for the hazardous impact these chemicals induce. According to Jeff Content, who published Pesticides Are Poison, people in Para village in Kerala were using pesticides at such a high rate that the children started developing epilepsy, cancer, brain damage, and other developmental issues. So they actually believed that their village was cursed. A study from the California Department of Health and Services states that pesticides are affecting children with even minimum exposure to chemicals with symptoms of acute nerve damage and broad-spectrum autism disorders. Along with killing people, the chemicals also kill the fields that the crops are cultivated in by killing the good bugs and like worms, and also killing millions and millions of microorganisms that help maintain healthy soil. They also weaken the plant's own immune system and root system. Now remember the water that we were talking about before that's used to nurture the plants? If it's not absorbed into the earth, it will run back off into streams, lakes, and rivers. The water that is so vital to these developing regions of the earth is full of poison. Please remember, these are only developing nations, and they don't have the advanced water filtration systems that we enjoy here in America. People are drinking, cooking, bathing with poisoned water. Once the cotton is processed on the farm, it is then taken to a processing mill to be turned into fabric. This process, again, uses water. The cotton is bleached and often mixed with other synthetic products to make textiles used for clothing. This process uses millions of tons of water. The water is often harvested from the local rivers and then redistributed back into the same water system. The skyline is filled with smoke from the textile mills, spewing pollution into the environment, and some of the water runoff from the textile plants is, of course, absorbed into the earth, leaving small villages at risk of exposure to chemicals. The harm in all this, of all these chemicals, are manifesting in humans, from minor hazards like headaches and nausea to chronic diseases like cancer. From there, the textiles are taken to dyeing plants. This is where the textiles get all those brilliant colors that we Americans love so much. One city in Savar, Bangladesh, has 5 of these plants surrounding a local school. The children inside say the smells from the water often makes them sick, and the sky will be the color of the dye that the plant is using that day. So if they're making us some beautiful purple shirts, the sky is purple. This actually, because they're spewing all this pollution into the air, burns their eyes, and it makes it hard to breathe. The next step, the factory, where the textiles are turned into clothing, such as jeans and the shirt on your back. Before the work can be started, an order is generated. The orders come from huge international companies, according to Fast Fashion International's website, like Walmart, H&M, Nike, and Zara, to name a few. And they are contracted to the lowest bidder. Once the order is generated, the sweatshop worker gets to work, quickly moving through the clothing in piece fashion to complete the work as quickly and efficiently as possible. This work is not without dangers. In 2013, a building collapsed after several employees had notified management of impending danger. According to the documentary, The True Cost, there was a large crack in the 8-story building that the garment workers sew our clothes in. That was the cause for their alarm. The complaints fell on deaf ears, and they were told to get back to work. Later that day, the building collapsed in Rana Plaza, killing 1,127 garment workers. An article published in the New York Times in 2012 states another 300 were killed in a tragic fire in Pakistan, where the workers were actually physically locked into the factory. The average pay for these workers? $2 or $3 a day. However, when compared to the other unskilled trades in the area, textile workers are offered steady employment and a means to support themselves. As Americans, we look at these low wages as an unimaginable hurdle, but we struggle here too. People are pushing for unskilled jobs to pay upward to $15 an hour because they don't have the ability to obtain wages to support their lifestyle. This now nationwide movement started right here in Seattle, Washington. According to 15now.org, it was actually started by our socialist council member. In reviewing an industry leader's website, H&M, they touted that their goal is to have fair living wages for all their employees by the year 2018. So, I guess we're working on it. Now that the orders have been filled and are exported, they're getting ready to be exported to the United States, of course, and other countries along the way for retail distribution. To get here from the factories, we use trains to transport the clothing to the seaports and cargo ships to export the clothing out of the country. While these are probably the most economical way of shipping thousands of tons of clothing across the globe, it's the least environmentally sound. According to an article titled Fast Fashion is the second dirtiest industry in the world, next to Big Oil, by EW Contributor in August 2015. While exactly how many tons of fuel was used each year by these shipping methods is unrecorded, we do know that just one ship produces the same amount of pollutants and cancer and asthma causing agents as 50 million cars in 1 year. Once the products are distributed to their intended companies, aggressive marketing prompts us, the consumers, to go out and buy these latest, trendiest, fashionable items. Seems legit. The shirts, pants, sweaters we purchased a couple weeks ago are fading and falling apart anyway. So, off we go, prompted by great marketing to replace those products that we need to stay abreast of the current fashion trends. Of course, after we go shopping, we haul a bag of clothes off to the donation center like a Goodwill or Salvation Army so that those less fortunate than us can receive the bounty of our generosity. When we do take these clothes into the Goodwill or Salvation Army, we're happily greeted by a worker that will unload our car so we don't even have to step out into the rain. And we even get a coupon for our next shopping visit. Perfect. Those newly donated treasures can end up in several places. They can end up in landfills. They can end up in recyclers where the fiber is used to fill furniture or used for insulation, or they can actually go to their intended purpose, being used to help the less fortunate. Unfortunately, most of the clothes we donate do not actually get resold or redistributed in our own communities. A vast majority of the clothes are sent to huge sorting mills where workers handpick a few selected items to be resold here, and the rest are put in huge bales of clothing where they will be processed for shipment. They are then put on another cargo ship and shipped to third world nations. The true danger is the side effects of the fashion industry yields. Pollution is a huge problem from start to finish when we talk about fashion. Fashion, according to EW Contributor, August 2015, is actually the number 2 pollutant on Earth today, falling only behind the oil industry. Seems like a relatively high number, right? Now, let's think about the process. Cotton uses water. The water will run off and be recycled into local streams, lakes, rivers, or be absorbed into the ground. The very earth that these farmers and their families depend on to live. The chemicals that are used to treat the cotton to prevent the bugs and to make the plants healthy and strong are resurfacing in drinking water. The dye used to produce those vibrant colors is polluting the air and being redistributed into local drinking water and absorbed into the earth. This poison is manifesting in humans, birth defects, chronic diseases, cancer, even skin conditions, all due to contaminated water, poisoned land, and polluted air, according to a documentary called The True Cost. After the clothing is bought and sold and discarded here in the U.S., the clothing is back on cargo ships headed to third world nations or even landfills. The most important thing that we can do as consumers, this is the Q&A section. I should probably paraphrase that. Let me ask a question and I will answer it for you. Okay? Okay. So in the beginning I said you can change the world, right? So you might ask, how? How can I change the world? The most important thing that we can do as consumers is consume less. The impact of the clothing industry has had over 20, the fast fashion industry, I should probably point that out, has had over 20 years of taxing our globe. We cannot possibly responsibly dispose of all the clothing that is produced, and this will send a message, if we start purchasing less, to company leaders to make a better, more durable, and yes, more expensive product. Another way that you can help is by donating your gently used clothing to churches, schools, and abuse centers and other not-for-profit centers in your own community. You might ask, what about those poor garment workers? They can't possibly sustain themselves on their such low living wages, making only $2 a day. When my people did it, we did it for free, under the duress of whips, chains, and even possible death. In the 1960s and 70s, here in the United States, factory workers came together to form unions. They were trying times for both the employees and the employers. There was violence in the streets, but as a nation, we overcame this adversity. There's an article called History of Labor Unions, Summary and Analysis that highlights many of the struggles that the workers here went through to force their employees to not only pay them more hourly money, but also fairly and equally, and also give them liberties at work, such as paid and unpaid breaks during their workday and time off for the weekend. The garment workers are in developing nations. We need to allow these workers to go through the learning curve, figure out for themselves how to better negotiate for themselves. They need to find ways to work and support each other and their struggle for higher wages. The power to overcome this rests in their hands. Final question: how do we stop pollution that is destroying the environment? Okay, so I'm super old. When I was young, I can remember huge factories spewing huge clouds of smoke into the air, garbage littering the streets, and the beaches loaded down with trash. We, as a nation, took a good hard look at our environment. We decided we needed to make changes, from our factories to our cars to the way we handled garbage. We came up with ways to clean up our schools, streets, and our beaches. We implemented new regulations on businesses to run cleaner operations. We were instructed as individuals via the TV to pick up trash on the streets and playgrounds. And we became a cleaner, stronger, more environmentally sound country together. It is up to these developing nations to implement their own standards of living and doing business. Business and government working together to make sure the environment is safe for their future generations. Hiring independent surveyors to find ways to keep business processes profitable while improving air, land, and water policies to make these countries stronger by cleaning up their own environment. While my focus today has been on some of the negative impacts of fast fashion, I would like to point out that there are some positive attributes fast fashion is contributing to the world. Fast fashion has created jobs in underdeveloped countries across the globe, especially jobs for women. Fast fashion has industrialized nations. Fast fashion is forcing environmental issues. Fast fashion has made the wearer feel better about themselves. And fast fashion has been a driving force in our growing economy. Fast fashion has impacted nearly every person alive today. It has polluted our land, our air, and our water. As citizens of the globe, it is our responsibility not just to conquer the earth, but to remember that this is our home. Let's take care of it. All of the pieces of this puzzle will come together once we realize, of inhabitants of the earth, we are here to live and work in a global community. Thank you.